Ladies and gentlemen, I've got a very exciting announcement for all of you. Later this year, October 2025, I will be playing in a 5-on-5 event in Dallas, Texas. A live event with tickets available for spectators. It's Team USA versus Team India, a 5-on-5 format of these players. It's Hikaru, Fabiano Caruana, Carissa Yip, and Tani Adewumi, plus myself. And we'll be taking on Gukesh, Arjun Erigaisi, Divya Deshmukh, Sagar Shah, the one and only, and Ethan Vaz. The format is a very unique format as only one game will be played at the same time, and it will be played in a 10-second plus 0-second bonus format. By the way, if you want to get a ticket to the event, they're already out. I will put a link in the description for you to do so. And in this video, I had a chance to talk to Hikaru. We talked a little bit about Norway chess. We talked a lot about Gukesh and the ongoing games that they have played against each other, plus some of Hikaru's recent comments about Gukesh. And overall, we previewed what you can expect in Dallas, Texas in October 2025. If you get a ticket, I hope to see you there. And in the meantime, please enjoy this video. We're going to talk today about a very unique type of thing. We're going to talk about Team USA, Team India, 5-on-5 in Dallas in front of thousands of people. First things first, what do you think of the format? So for anybody that doesn't know, we're going to be playing one game only against one other person on the opposite side, 10 minutes, 0-second bonus time. And obviously, if it's a draw, it only gets faster and faster. So first things first, thoughts on the format?
Yeah, so I think the format is very unique. Now, there are a lot of parts to it. I think the first thing is that this event is going to have a live audience. We're hoping to sell tickets. We're hoping to reach out to the broader Indian community that is in the greater Dallas-Fort Worth area. So the fact that it's going to be played in front of a live audience, hopefully 1,000 to 2,000 fans, will make for a very unique experience. I think there's supposed to be live entertainment. The games are going to be played, probably players wearing headphones. Very, very different from the traditional sort of event that you see. I would also add that I think the big difference is the games will not be played simultaneously. I think that when I look at a lot of chess tournaments that are trying to sort of sell chess from the media standpoint, it's very hard to do that when you have multiple games at the same time. If you look at Norway chess, there are a lot of these Armageddon games. One game's going on, reach a critical moment, they switch to another game, and you miss some of the action. And in fact, I think if you look at major sports, there's no major sport where you have that same kind of conflict. If you look at, say, the playoffs in the NBA or hockey, usually the games are going to be played on opposing days. You don't have games running at the same time during the most important moments, which of course is the playoffs. So that should make it very unique. I think also the lineup is going to be quite exciting. You have myself playing against the current world champion Gukesh. You have Arjun playing against Fabiano. You have Tani playing against Ethan Vaz, which is the juniors. I believe you have Divya playing against Carissa Yip, if I remember correctly, two of the top female players. And then, of course, there's a big matchup between you, Levy, and, of course, Sagar Shah. So it's going to be pretty exciting. I think the fact there has to be a winner, there likely are going to be multiple games, and the games being played without increment should lead to a spectacle. I will add on my end, I didn't do this in Norway, but I did consider at the end of the event when I lost weight, trying to find some funny way of banging the table or doing something along those lines. I will say with this event, I think that will be encouraged, and probably if I have the opportunity to smash the table, I will.
Speaking of viral moments, in this event in particular, I think one of the stipulations is there is no resigning. Like Magnus slammed the table and resigned, but there is no resigning. I mean, they're really playing it out quite literally and metaphorically. Is that strange? Like when you're in a losing position and you have to play it out on the board and try to flag your opponent, does that make things a bit more odd?
Yeah, I mean, I think from the professional standpoint, it is a little bit awkward to be in a situation where you have to play till checkmate. That being said, as I've said on many different topics over the last couple of years, if you do want chess to reach the largest audience, the vast majority of people do not understand chess to a great degree, and seeing the game played out to the very end does give them some satisfaction. They can at least see the checkmate on the board. I think, when I think about all the things that have happened, all the collabs I've done over the years, when someone sees a checkmate on the board, you see a pattern with the king and queen versus king, that is something that registers. Whereas a resignation with a bunch of pieces on the board will not register, in my opinion, at least, with an audience that's not very chess educated.
Also, over the last few years, this no increment time control has gotten quite popular. A lot of the online rapid events have them. Also, the Global Chess League added it. I think there are some discussions that it will be in the Esports World Cup. This video will come out before the Esports World Cup. and obviously this event will have it as well. What are your thoughts on +0? Because it's one thing to play it online, and it is one of the most popular time controls for regular people, 10-0, but does it fare well for title players?
I mean, my general attitude is that as far as online chess goes, I definitely think games should be played without increment. That's my strong belief that if you mismanage your time, that's your own fault. But I think it's possible because of just general speed using a mouse to make, more than 60 moves quite easily in a 10-minute game or even a 3-minute game for that matter. So I have no issue with it. I think when it comes to over the board and very specifically this event in October, um, it is supposed to be a spectacle. That is the goal, is you want emotions, you want crazy things to happen. I think that tournaments like the Global Chess League, for example, is a little bit more questionable because there are very serious prizes on the line in a different kind of way. So it just depends on what the structure is. I envision the event in October to be more along the lines of like entertainment, pure entertainment. And I think there does need to be a separation between what's pure entertainment and what is professional. For example, the Global Chess League, I think the winning team got something like $200,000. So when you have a game decided in those last seconds and there's such massive stakes, it can be a little bit messy. So I think you have to figure out what the right balance is. But in general, I am a fan of playing without increment.
Let's talk a bit about your opponent. You have one game against them. You're going to have the white pieces, although I suppose you could have a few more games if that 10-minute game is a draw. And that, of course, is Gukesh, reigning world champion. At the time of doing this interview with you, I think he's world number 5, but only by about 2 rating points. He had a brief stint there where he was the number 1 ranked, let's say, Indian player in the world, but it's very close with him and Eric Geisy. From what you've seen from him so far, in his classical games, in some of the Rapid and Blitz that he's played, in some of those Armageddons, what are your perceptions of the world champion, and how are you looking forward to this particular matchup?
Yeah, so I think Gukesh is very much a mystery for a couple of reasons. I think the first thing is that his games are not particularly flashy, at least in the last 6 months or so, I'd say, between the World Championship and Norwich. As you don't see a lot of flash to his games, but he does have very, very good results. And so I think it can be a little bit mysterious when you're looking at it, you don't see anything special, and you're wondering how does he do so well. But he does have some great traits. Very specifically, he's very resourceful. He really has a very strong mental approach, and he's always trying to win the games. I think for me, what I find really peculiar is that when I look at an event like Norway Chess, he got a lot of bad positions. Now, his result was ultimately not that bad. He had the very big win against Magnus, but if you look at the pure positions he reached, he very easily could have lost something like 7 or 8 of the games of the tournament. In the end, he lost, I think, 4 and he won 3, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it was 4 and 5. I'm not sure, but it seemed like he was trying very, very hard. Now, it's unclear whether that's because he became world champion, so in effect, he achieved the highest title, and now he wants to push himself to see what he can sort of get away with against top players, or whether that's just his natural style, and he just wants to be very aggressive. So it's very hard to judge where Gukesh is at. I was going into Norway, I sort of was expecting a much more solid Gukesh than the wild west sort of style he had, but he's a very strong player, and I think that the fact that he was able to do so well in spite of reaching so many losing positions really does show why he's the world champion, because in critical moments he does keep it together better than some of the other players.
Having said that, in Dallas, the first game that you play, there's only 10 minutes on the clock. It's very different, I would argue, to have 10 minutes on the clock heading towards move 40 in a classical tournament, right? And you've already settled into the game. Having 10 minutes at the very beginning with no bonus time, no time to figure out different opening resources, does that give you an advantage in your mind?
I think I should have an advantage. I think first and foremost, unlike Gukesh, I've actually played a lot of chess without increment. Growing up in the U.S., most events I played were without increment, without digital clocks, even for that matter, when I was pretty young. So I think I have a pretty good feel for it. I think actually, whether it's this event in October, or even the Esports World Cup, I think my best opportunities are going to happen when there are games that are played with no increment. Because I think my usage of time is better than a lot of players as far as in the opening phase and in the middle game. I think in the end game, there's certain players, very specifically, I think Ali Reza, who he might get much lower on the clock than I do, but he's very, very good at playing with a couple of seconds. So I think that my chances against Gukesh are very good in Dallas, but of course, you never know what could happen in a one-off situation.
Okay, controversial question time. The famous table slam moment, the game, if you will, Magnus Gukesh, Norway Chess, obviously. The one that probably got something like 500 million impressions around the world, which is quite wild. you were recapping your own game against Fabiano, your own 2 games against Fabiano that day, and you saw Magnus had a dominant position, and you assumed he would win, right? And then you, in the video, kind of said, Magnus had a crushing victory against Gukesh. Definitely not, the best player in the world. And I know your tongue-in-cheek humor, and obviously nobody's the best player in the world, even if they're the world champ, because Magnus exists. But your comment section really let you have it that video, because obviously Magnus went on to lose the game. So I want to give you an opportunity to kind of address that. And, do you laugh about it? Do you kind of like kick yourself? Oh, maybe I should have waited a little bit. Or what are your, impressions of that video recap in that day?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that a lot of people consistently, I think, underestimate or forget is that at the end of the day, it is a very serious tournament. And when I go into these tournaments, of course, I do my recaps after the game, but I always have a certain schedule or routine to it. And I remember that after my game that day finished, I forget who it was against. I think I had a draw and an Armageddon win, maybe, or loss. Maybe it was Arjun, if I'm not mistaken. Forget exactly who I played that day. But when I went in and did the recap, I sort of had this decision: do I wait for Magnus's game to end, try to recap my games, and then Magnus's game as well, or do I just do my recap, follow my routine, my schedule, go eat dinner, and move along with the day? And I sort of did not expect Magnus to lose that position. I felt that it was an end game, which is Magnus's bread and butter, more so than anything else. Over the years, the number of end games that he's won from even just small advantages or equal positions, it's probably into the hundreds at this point. So I made the decision to do the recap. I know a lot of people were very unhappy at the time. They would say, do another recap or amend it. But the problem is, of course, once I've done it, like, I'm not going to suddenly take the recap down and redo another recap. I'm already preparing for the next day. So I was a little bit disappointed. I also remember, however, it's funny, this is a little bit of an anecdote, but I went to dinner after I did my recap, and I'm down there, and Danny Wrench was having dinner with Fabiano and Ariantari, and I heard them at the table, and Fabi was saying, like, Gukesh's decisions in this game are so weird. He's just going to lose. Magnus is going to win. And so it's really funny because then, of course, I was at a different table and they were at their own table, but we were all watching the game. And then we saw this big blunder with knight e2 check. And it was just pretty funny to see how the mood shifted very, very quickly from where it was just very dismissive of Gukesh. It's only, wow, Magnus has made this huge mistake. The tournament's wide open.
Yeah, that was a wild day. I remember looking at that game. I was driving at the time, and I'm watching the messages pour in amongst friends, like, and then, I get home and I take out my phone and it's like, oh, he slammed the table. I'm like, what? And I'm like, no way. And I go, and no, that's quite literally what happened. So, but that, to your point, Gukesh was resourceful. And there's a very famous interview with Russell Westbrook in the NBA. And the reporter asked him, did the Jazz win this game or did you guys lose this one? Or something like that, And
yes,
a bit of both. Like, Gukesh kept the game going enough and he got some counterplay, got some chances.
I think for me there were a couple of takeaways. First of all, I was very surprised by how seriously Magnus took that game. Like, obviously it's very important, but I did not really expect him to have that kind of reaction, like it was the end of the world, the way that he did in the heat of the moment. So I was very surprised because Magnus seems like someone where he's moved past being the world champion. He seems fairly content to just play a tournament here or there and do his own thing. So I was very surprised by the reaction, that just how seriously, how big of a deal it was for him. But then secondly, the other thing that I for me was a big takeaway is the fact that, with myself, it's no secret that as I've gotten a little bit older, I'm a little bit slower. I make more mistakes when I get low on time. And it felt to me that with Magnus, he didn't really sense that danger, or if he got really low on time, blunders could happen. And I think, it's a very small detail, but going forward, if and when Magnus plays classical again, I have a feeling you're going to see him try to avoid situations where he gets below 1 minute on the clock, if it's like 10-second increment or no increment, just because it's clear that also in his case, just a little bit less sharp than he once was.
For sure, and definitely you feel the nerves for the first time, maybe ever.
Yeah, definitely.
As you get older and so on and so forth. You played Gukesh twice in Norway. You only played him twice. You did not play him in any Armageddons. You had two decisive games back to back. Would you like to take a look at them? First
Sure.
one is the one that he won, and then the second game is the one that you won. The second one was somehow a bit more straightforward, right? We can take a look at it as well, but maybe you wanna highlight the kind of critical moments in 7-8 minutes time for each game.
Sure. Yeah, so I'll just set up this critical moment. Yeah, so the first big moment here was this Actually, I think the names are wrong, or it's correct now. It's fine. I'll look at it from the white side. So, this moment after A4 was played, this was a very big moment. Now, you have to remember that Gukesh going to this game, he had lost the first two games of the tournament to start. And I had two possibilities here. Now, the main possibility, which is ultimately what I played against Wei Yi in the final round, was this move Bishop E6. But because Gukesh was, I don't want to say tilting, but because he had lost first two games, I decided to play something more on the edge when I played this Knight A5 idea with C5. And I got a very, very bad position right away, which I think, kind of it destabilized me. I didn't get to play with a lot of rhythm at the start. I just spent a ton of time. Now, I knew I was much worse out of the opening. There's this very critical moment right around this d4 moment. And I was very surprised because Gukesh played this move very quickly. I had a feeling that I was not in great shape here. But when he played this d4 move, I thought it was a mistake because of why I ultimately played it in the game with this whole, sorry, wrong position. Yeah, right here with knight takes e4. And I thought I was completely fine. But the big mistake that I made, I felt, was that I used way too much time. So if you go back right here to d4. I have an hour 16. Remember, there's no increment till move 40, and I felt spent too much time. Where on these four moves, I spent nearly 30 minutes. I went from an hour 16 down to 48, down to 49, I guess. So it's like 27-ish. But I felt my time usage was very bad, and that wasn't necessarily the end of the world, except that what it did is I started trying to play much quicker. And when I started trying to play much quicker, that was relatively fine, but I was not able to slow myself down at the critical moment. And then I play this rook f4, and already here it's still probably a draw, but I'm still moving quickly. And then I end up making this huge mistake with queen d7, where I overlook that after this move a6, there's queen to e5, and suddenly there are all kinds of threats. Let's just say knight d3, for example. Or sorry, not knight d3. Let's just say queen d1, king h2, something like knight to d3. Or actually, not knight d3. What did I see here? One second, let me go back. So yeah, after queen to e5, what was my line? Oh yeah, the move was knight d3. This is what I saw, knight d3. But after queen f8, king h7, there's this move queen to f8, and this is what I completely missed, as white has the move knight to e7, threatening this checkmate, and now white has a passed pawn on the b file, and everything falls apart. And the other thing was, when I played queen d7, I offered Gukesh a draw. It's the 30th move for black. I offered him a draw here, and this was just a very sort of, it speaks to the mindset of how I kind of fell asleep a little bit. When I'd equalized, I moved too quickly, fell asleep, didn't sense the danger, and Gukesh pounced. And the rest of the game was pretty straightforward. There's a moment later when I could have saved the game, perhaps, but it was just not meant to be. And the time situation, of course, played a massive role and couldn't recover. So it was a very disappointing loss. I think not so much because of losing the game, but because when I got the really bad position, Gukesh let me off the hook, and then I couldn't recover. So that was very, very upsetting. And also, until the final round, I had this what if in my mind. I was thinking to myself, why didn't I play this move bishop to e6 like I ultimately did in the final game against Wei Yi in the tournament? So
I want to ask you a question, because it's always fascinating to me when I obviously am recapping these games, because I don't know. I mean, people get winning and losing positions all the time because certain things are missed. Like you just said, you missed, the idea of queen f8. Yes. To give up the pawn completely and play knight e7. And so I wonder, when do you miss it? Like, do you miss it once the queen is on d7, or do you miss it when he goes h4?
I missed it when I played queen d7. When I offered him the draw and he started thinking for a while, I realized that I had made the mistake.
Yeah.
I think he spent like 7 minutes. So like I realized it here already. But the big thing that was bad about this situation is I should have already been expecting him to play h4 and using that time to try and come up with the best defensive resource, and I didn't do that. Instead, when he played h4, I start panicking because there's no increment, and I know that I've made a big blunder, and it all just fell apart very quickly. But he played very well from h4 on. I think he played pretty much all of the best moves.
Do you think a part of it also was maybe relaxing because you were under pressure, and then it seemed like you kind of found your way through, and then you kind of get to a point and you're like, all right, this is relatively straightforward, and then it just so happens like it's not so clear, and then suddenly it just falls apart, like h4, and then obviously, I guess on the next move he takes on a7. Is there an element of that as well, or is that kind of an oversimplification? You kind of just go, okay, it's easy, I'm gonna
I think in general there are a couple of types of way of looking at least at the top level. The first one is, if you survive the opening and nobody really has a big pull, it's just very equalish, generally the game is going to be a draw. It's just not going to be very exciting. The second one is where you get a slight pull and maybe you have some chances to try and put pressure on your opponent. The third one is where they have chances, or they're much better. And the one where your opponent can be much better out of the opening very often occurs when you have the black piece and you're trying to defend and hold hold on as much as you can. And so that's pretty much what happened. Is I sort of relaxed. I thought I had saved it, but also to be fair, one of the things that I did very well in the game against Magnus, I felt in the previous round, because everything sort of matters in terms of the timeline, is that I was way down on the clock against Magnus as well. I think I was down something like 40 or 50 minutes, and then I played a bunch of moves in 2 to 3 minutes. I just started moving very, very quickly, and I made a lot of very good decisions. And Magnus, I felt in that game, kind of cracked. Like he started panicking a touch, and at some point, I think I was even ahead on the clock. So it worked very well when I moved really quickly. So I think I also was trying to do a little bit of that too much in this game, because it had worked so well against Magnus in the previous round.
Now, the second game you guys played, and I'll toggle over to it. I hope it keeps us in sync. Okay, so you should see a fresh position. You know, you're playing with the white pieces in this game, and this game was weird just from the standpoint, like, it really felt like Gukesh took back on the g6 square with the incorrect pawn and lost the game on the spot somehow. Like, he just had no play. So maybe we can kind of go to that moment. We can talk about this opening, because this is one of the most boring but maybe underestimated openings in chess, the four knights. There's all sorts of little ideas. You beat Fabiano famously at the Grand Swiss with the four knights. So yeah, can you take me through that?
There are a couple of critical moments. The first moment was right here when I played the Scotch move order and Gukesh played knight f6. Now, in the Grand Chess Tour, he played this move bishop c5 against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. I think he confused a move order in that game, and he lost. I was definitely hoping to see a repeat of this variation. And the reason that's important is because if you go from one system to another, sometimes you're not as familiar with the variations. And my view is that when Gukesh played knight f6, probably had spent a lot of time looking at the Miessis variation with takes, e5, queen e7, queen e2, knight d5, white can play c4, many different moves. But there's a lot of effort. It's a big effort to try and memorize a lot of these lines and review them. And the reason this is important is because when Gukesh played this move knight f6 on move 4, then it's clear that's what his focus was. And so when I go into this four knights, this is a system that Gukesh does not play. He does not play this system with the regular four knights. And I think that's what led to this this forcing variation. Bishop g4 is what he played. C takes d5 also completely fine. But we reach this moment, and all this is well known. And right around, right here after queen to e2, he suddenly went into a 30-minute think here. And to me, this was a clear sign that he sort of knew the line, but he didn't know the ideas by heart. Because if he did, he would have played the move bishop g6 right away. And there was the famous game of the candidates with takes, and I believe it was queen to e5. And the game ended in a draw between Fabiano and Nepomniachtchi. So he spent a lot of time here, and he played rook b8. This is still fine, queen e4. But here he decided to take with the f-pawn. And this move, to me, the only real explanation I have for this move is that Gukesh was unaware of the idea that I played in the game with g3 and king g2. Because in my mind, I think Gukesh must have somehow thought that he was better here, or he was the one playing for the win, possibly. Because without g3, let's just say I play something random, like, I don't know, like rook b3, for example, and black is able to get like bishop b6, and I go like rook b1 and some like c6, bishop c7. Maybe you can think that black has chances to be better. So that's really the only rationale I have for this f takes g6 move. Besides, maybe he just thought after h takes g6 it was kind of weakening with these pawns near the king, and he was worried about some kind of attack. I mean, I still would have played some g3, king g2 anyway, but it really is nothing special. And so I think it's one of two things. Either he just felt instinctively that opening the h file was very risky for some reason, or he thought that he might even be better after taking with the f pawn if he could get, say, for example, just to set this up, if black could somehow get the pawns on g5 and g6, maybe there are some threats on the diagonal, maybe there are some threats on the f file. That's really the only thought process I have. It's one of those two things. Either he felt unsure about h takes g6, and he was worried about the h file, or he thought he might be better. And when he played f takes g6, I'm fairly certain that he had to have missed what I played in the game with g3. There's really no other explanation. Because once I go g3 positionally, I think it's actually just lost for black.
And maybe not even that. Maybe not even that you can go g3, but maybe just like how hard black's position is. Like that sometimes happens. You just realize you can't make a move.
Well, to be fair, without g3 though, it's hard to argue white's better. Actually, like what is white's plan? Actually, that's kind of the hard thing. Like if I go rook b3 and you put the bishop on b6, what is white's plan? Like you can't. I mean, h4 is always going to run into some rook f4 type stuff, or even queen g3. So it's very much about this one g3, this g3 move. Without g3, white has nothing. So I'm thinking either he just I think he probably just missed G3. Thought H takes G6 opens the H file, was instinctively thought it was wrong, so he took with the F pawn. And then he just missed G3 altogether. And after G3, I mean, it's pretty much it's a dream position for white. I mean, black never mobilized these pawns, which then means also that there are always back rank checkmate ideas with Queen E8 looming. As I mentioned during the confessionals, like there's ideas of H4, H5, there's Queen E8. You can just slowly improve the position, and black is completely paralyzed. Also, if you ever try to bring the king towards the center, you're going to run into all kinds of problems on the light square diagonals. So black is completely paralyzed, and it's just a very, very easy position for white to play. And to Gukesh's credit, he did try to defend for quite a while. But ultimately, actually, this is an important moment. I played Queen C4. If this were a game that were played with increment for move one, I probably would have traded the queens on F5 and played this end game. Black can't take because of the back rank checkmate with Rook E8, and gone something like G6, Bishop D3, Rook F7, and something like Rook to E5, and probably I would have gone on to win anyway. But because there was no increment, I didn't want to simplify and go into an endgame. I really wanted to keep the pressure on Gukesh to where he would have to keep finding moves and potentially get too low on time. And also, of course, there's no danger because again, these pawns are always stuck on H7 and G6. If black ever plays H6, you just go Queen E4 and the pawn is very weak. The diagonal is a big issue, and there's just nothing that you can do. So yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, and we can go through the game to its conclusion. He didn't really have a chance after. You had these moments where you were shuffling the pieces, but obviously there was no chance that it was going to ever end in a draw. And then once you got H5, during the recap, I flashed this position and then the position 15 moves prior, and I was impressed that none of black's pieces had moved.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, basically, there's nothing black can really do. I mean, if you think about it, the pawns can't do anything. The pawns are on the same files. Like you can't create any threat. So it's just a matter of how does white break through. But to be fair, I mean, like you think this is dominating, but Gukesh did put up great resistance, and right around this moment when he played Bishop F8, I was starting to get a little bit frustrated because it felt like there should be some way to win, like Queen to A8, for example, or something. Because I think actually earlier, if I go back, I thought somewhere around this moment. I think I saw something like Bishop D6, Rook E8, Queen B2, Queen A8, something like this, and with Bishop C4, followed by Queen D5, it's just game over. So, just to highlight it, something like A5 takes Queen D5, and there's just a clean checkmate on G8. So, like around this moment, like a few moves earlier, I thought it should be technically winning where he can't defend. But to his credit, he found some really good moves, and right around here, I was actually very surprised he didn't play the move Rook to F8, trying to keep the rooks, trying to trade the rooks off the board. Because after Bishop F8, I go here. Queen E7, I take, and now he takes, and I play his Queen C8 move, Queen C5, and even here, I almost played a mistake. I almost took this pawn on G6, which would have allowed, I think, Queen C6 and King G8, and now suddenly there are threats on the H file as well. So Gukesh did fight very, very well. I mean, fortunately, I found Bishop E4, and then there's just too many threats. There's Bishop D5, there's Queen H3, there's pressure on the 8th rank as well. There's just not a whole lot black can do, and eventually, even though my king becomes a little bit open, the rest is just very, very basic. Force the queens off the board. I go Bishop D5 with Bishop F7, and it's just game over. Like something like C6, Bishop F7, win the rook, and the checkmate.
Be honest, because not a lot of top chess players, let's say athletes, would admit to something like this. Was this an important win? Because you had lost to him earlier in the tournament, and obviously you also played in the last round of the candidates. Or is that kind of too much playing into the whole storyline? Like I think it was an important win just in general, right? Considering all the previous games and the fact that he's the world champ.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it was a very important win. As far as the tournament goes, I was in a very awkward situation in this event because it's a tournament where I wanted to have a good result, but there is a looming possibility of the candidates. And it's strange because, initially when I agreed to play this tournament, I forget however many months ago it was, the thought was just play the tournament, no thought of the candidates, nothing else really. But after I did well in the American Cup, then these thoughts about the 40 games and qualifying were on my mind. And to some degree in the second half of the tournament, I was playing a bit of keep away. I was trying to take very little risk. And once I won this game, I knew that I was going to gain rating points almost for sure. and it was going to be overall like a big success. So there were many things, but also I think just beating Gukesh was quite nice. I think, you know, one of the things that's always weird is sometimes you look back on things, you always wonder, like, you know, why do things happen the way they do? And you could say, why did I play this against Gukesh in the candidates? I had white in the last round in that game, and I didn't play e4. I played d4 against him. So you can always look back on it kind of like that. But mostly for me, it was just it was really nice to get a win in that second game after the first game, which I did not feel like I should have lost. So it felt like everything evened itself out.
I think the last couple questions, we should take a look at the rest of the lineup. So how do you foresee maybe who are the favorites, some of the matchups that you're most looking forward to? You'll have the unique position of having already played Gukesh and then getting to watch the rest of your teammates battle. So it'll be Fabi versus...
I believe it's the other order, by the way. I think we play last, but I could be wrong.
Oh, that would make sense.
I'm not sure.
You're...
I'm not sure, but either way, I think the matchups are going to be very balanced. I think that in straight up 10-0, Arjun should be a favorite over Fabiano. I mean, of course, Fabiano is very strong. Anything can happen. I think that looking at the other matchups, it's very unclear. I think that, you know, if you get the right opening, you're probably a favorite against Cigar. I think by pure strength, he has sometimes played at a higher level than you have. But I think the opening is going to be very critical in your matchup. I think between the girls, it's very much a toss-up. I think that Divya is objectively a stronger player than Carissa, but Carissa is more like ups and downs. So if Carissa's playing very well, I think she could definitely pull off the upset. And then there's the matchup between Ethan Vaz and Tani, and that also, Ethan's had some great results in Title Tuesday. I think I played him not so long ago, and Tani, of course, also he I believe is an IM now. He also has been playing a lot of Blitz Online, so that matchup will be very exciting as well. I don't think it's a clear situation where one side is a big favorite over the other.
Hikaru, appreciate your insights as always. Is there anything we didn't cover that you would like the general audience to know before we go?
I mean, I think the main thing that I point out is that this event on October 4th in Dallas, it's going to be a show. It's going to be entertainment. It's not just going to be the players play, they shake hands, and that's it. It's not going to be 1 hour. It's going to be a couple of hours, a lot of fun. There should be a lot of interviews. And I think looking forward, when I look at chess as a whole, I think trying to go more in the vein of entertainment is really the only way to potentially grow chess to a level that is bigger than it is currently. So I'm very optimistic. I'm really excited to see everything that the organizers have in store for the event.
I agree. I will echo that. I'm super excited for the matchup, but also for the spectacle, to meet the fans, to wear the jerseys. I think it'll be a lot of fun, and it should be even more fun if we manage to win. So
hopefully,
hopefully we see the fans there that are going to get a ticket, and if not, hopefully people watch online. Hikaru, pleasure as always, and looking forward to the World Rapid and Blitz teams.
Yeah, looking forward. Good talking to you, Levy.